Hello. Hello, everybody. Welcome once again to another Wednesday and another exciting edition of Victory Never Sleeps. Today, we are joined by the lovely Heather Young, Folkbuilder in the Thorshof District, and Frithweaver in Chief of Thorshof. I'm going to have Heather on tonight for a variety of reasons. She's pleasant to talk to. She knows a lot of stuff, but chiefly tonight, I want to talk a little bit about building local community, what that's like, the task of frith building, and how that relates to our ladies and in our community in a really contemporary and ongoing, as of like this week and next week kind of way. Before we get to that, some top of the show stuff, I want to give a shout out to Jason Gallagher, amazing folk builder, amazing man, good friend of mine. That is why I'm dressed down a little bit tonight, is to celebrate him with his shirt that we happen to sell in the AFA store. That, amongst a lot of other cool products that Madison East and Witten Brandy and a number of people have been working on to get looking good. And I will tell you, because I'm wearing one right now, they're soft, they're nice quality. We appreciate everybody who gets one of these and in doing so donates a little bit to the AFA through that purchase. We appreciate it. Goes to a good cause, and we got a lot of cool products out there tonight. And we've been kind of dropping new product every week, and folks seem to like it so far. Tonight we are dropping Baldershof merchandise. So there is. So remember, on I believe the Jason Gallagher shirt and the I'll share your Gothic disapproval shirt, I believe those are separate little kind of hidden links for limited time products. The rest of this is at the store proper. All the Baldershof stuff all the Baldershof stuff looks really cool. The other products are awesome as well. Appreciate that. If you guys want to make a purchase, awesome. If you guys want to participate in the chat, so this is going on across lots of platforms simultaneously right now. So we are on YouTube, as most of you can see. I think our second biggest live watch is on Twitter, or X, if you will. We also have so anyways, so we're on a bunch of spots. We're on Odyssey, Rumble, Entropy, Twitter, VK as well. We got a question last week on Entropy that we didn't get to because I didn't look in time. It was a monetized question, and we're going to see if Nick can find that so we can go ahead and get it answered. If you're listening and you asked, we're going to try really hard to get to your question, and I apologize we skipped you last week. Any question, if you want to attach any question that's attached to a donation, will jump right to the front of the line. But you don't have to donate anything to get your question answered. Any question you ask, we'll be happy to answer, and we will get to all of them. I think tonight's show is going to be kind of a question-heavy platform, but we'll see where it goes. Anybody who wants to donate otherwise, the ways to do that are in the description of the program. Also, be aware that we are coming out as a podcast here in a couple of days on Spotify, on Apple Music, iHeartRadio, and on Amazon Music. So I say Apple Music, I mean Apple Podcasts. So if that's how you do it, I'm not sure where you listen to your podcast, but we have tried to make it as convenient and get as big a reach as possible. Any of those platforms we're going on live, you can ask questions. We're happy to answer them. I guess most of the conversation is happening over on YouTube if you want to be part of it. And yeah, we appreciate y'all's tuning in and participating in the chat. Some other things coming up. We would love to see you guys at Odenshof this next month. We are celebrating Midsummer. It's likely to be the biggest AFA gathering of the year. Not guaranteed. Something could outshine it, but it typically is our biggest one, and it's going to be special. It's certainly our longest running one, and it's at our oldest Hof. It's at Odenshof that we got in the fall of 2015. So I believe this is the 8th Midsummer at Odenshof. And that was carrying on a tradition. So if you can't see, it's from the 21st to the 23rd. If you're interested, get in touch with your local folk builder or any folk builder for that matter. We can get you all set up. Yeah, that event was going for a long time. It's carrying on a tradition long before we had the Hofs. I think the first midsummer, as a national event, first big midsummer celebration in, what did we call it? It was Midsummer in the Sierras at the time. It was a little further up I-80 in Alta, California. I think the first one of those was 2008, 2009, thereabouts. I think my first one of those was 2010, and that's the event that really got me completely overwhelmed and in love with Asatru and doing this the way that I did and put me on the trajectory I'm on. So it's a real special event. Love to see you out at Odenshof. Following month in July, we're going to be celebrating Sigerbloat at Sigerheim. That's in Jackson County, Tennessee. That's going to be July the 19th through the 21st, with the main happenings going on that Saturday. I'd love to see you out there. It's a little bit more rustic. Really special place. This will be our second Sigerbloat at Sigerheim, and a lot of love in that place. A lot of people have been putting in work. We're building something really special there, and we'd love to have you guys come out and be part of, these foundations that's being built from. Also, that's the home of the absolutely beautiful statues of our founder, Stephen McNallen, and his wife, Githia Sheila McNallen. I am excited to see those in person. I've had a whole lot of check-ins on those and a whole lot of involvement, but this will be my first chance to actually get to see and touch and experience those in the bronze, as it were. So I'm excited to do that. And then following that, and I guess this last one I'll plug for right now, but in August, we're going to be celebrating Frithweaving at Baldershof. And that's in Murdoch, Minnesota. It's going to be August the 16th through the 18th. That is a really special place. It's beautiful. People are wonderful. If you can make it to any or all three of those, we would love to see you there. If you are a member, absolutely. If you're not a member, we would still love you to come and check us out and see what's what. If you're interested, reach out to any member of AFA leadership, folk builders, Gothar, myself, and we'd be happy to get you set up and make that happen. Remember to like, share, and subscribe wherever you find this. If you like it and you want to help out, because that helps all those algorithms. And, word of mouth does so much. If you know anybody who should be listening to this, might find it interesting, might be spiritually strengthened by it, let them know, send them this way. We'd love to help. If you're listening to this and you are a heterosexual white person that wants to believe in our gods and build a relationship with the ICER, we would encourage you to join the AFA. We'd love to have you be part of what we're doing. If you're not, we ask you to consider why not. And if there's questions or hesitations, please reach out. Somebody would be happy to clear anything up. But we want to bring all our folk home. I think that's what I got off the top. We've got some donations, some questions, some things. But before we do that, welcome, Heather. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Doing fantastic. Getting to be
I've been
casual this evening with my "What Would Jason Gallagher Do" t-shirt on. So I'm doing all right.
I've been watching Aubrey be a different princess all week.
Yeah, she's in rare form. She is excited. She is all in on her gymnastics right now, and she's doing really, really good at that. So I'm impressed. It's really cool as a dad to just watch her level up with her different little girl skills. I don't know, seemingly every couple days she surprises me with something she can do now that she couldn't do before. So
Yeah, Mandy sent me a text saying she was ready for the Olympics, and I said, "Save me a seat."
probably got a little while for that, but she's doing all right.
She's perfect. Stop.
It's pretty amazing. I was telling Mandy the other day, we're really, really blessed if within any bounds of reality, if I was to design a child, I don't think I could come up with something as perfect as she is. She's fantastic. We are very lucky, very fortunate, very blessed people. Couple few things right off the top, because he is that kind of guy. Ronald Blake bought us a coffee. Thank you, Ronald. You are very much appreciated, and your generosity is an inspiration. A few other things also. Okay, so the question that while we're on Ronald, he also donated $50 towards current fundraiser we've got going on for helping an AFA family that's in need. Thank you for that. That means a lot, and I know it'll mean a lot to them. We have our Derek Bolig donated $5 to Victory Never Sleeps. Thank you, Derek. We appreciate it very much. We also have that question accompanied by $20 from Entropy last week. So I hope that whoever it was is listening. Question is, can you elaborate on why different ethnicities of white people should follow the Norse gods rather than their own ethnic mythos? Yes. So the question makes sense on the face of it, but I think that we need to, I think it's useful to think about it. Where did those gods come from? Because I think there's a tendency today when we look back at an ancient people or, an ancient religion of a people, you study it as if it started fresh under whatever name that is, and that's how it was. Like, for example, why shouldn't Greek people worship the Greek pantheon of gods? Of course, look back. Oh, ancient Greece. What is ancient Greece? It starts during, whatever, the archaic or the classical period of Greece, but it doesn't. Those people came from somewhere. The migrations of our folk, if you trace things back linguistically, culturally, all these things had a root somewhere and they came from somewhere. So at what point did the Greek pantheon come into existence? When white people move into Greece, there's no story or reason to believe that all of a sudden the gods were there waiting for them under those names. No, they took with them the gods that they had wherever they came from. So we trace that migration back to the Proto-Indo-European or to the Aryan period. And the gods of the different European pantheons coalesce at that point. So it's not as though all of a sudden when white people find themselves in Scandinavia, Odin sprouts up, or they find themselves in Greece and Zeus sprouts, or in Rome and all of a sudden Jupiter appears. These are all cultural understandings of deities that have been with us as a people since the very beginning of our folk. We categorically reject the out of Africa theory. Our folk are very much a distinct people that have a distinct origin. We believe that our gods, the Aesir, or whatever they were known as at that point, brought us into creation and made us who we are. Those same gods have been with us this entire time. Over different centuries, different epochs, different geography, and different experience, our people have developed really different ways of relating to those gods and have come to know them by different names in different places for different reasons. And the stories of our gods and the myths look really different in different lenses at different times through different periods of retelling and understanding. The one that we believe very much has come to us in the best and most accessible way is the Norse conceptualization, the Norse nomenclature, the Norse understanding of our gods and their stories. And more than that, that is the conception of our gods that caused this reawakening of our folk and our faith that we're experiencing today. It was under those terms and under those names and through that experience that Allfather Odin reached out and inspired our founder, Stephen McNallen, and built the relationship that our current Asatru Folk Assembly, our ordination, all of what we have traces back to. And so it's under those terms and that understanding that we can proceed forward in a unified way that makes sense. That simply hasn't been the case with other conceptions of the Aryan deities, but it has been through our conceiving them as the Aesir. And that's why we do that. And it wouldn't be wrong to have done it any of, tens of different ways. But this is the way that we did it. This is the way that we were inspired to do it. And this is the way that has brought us where we are. Being unified in doing it that way is the most effective way to bring our folk back to our ancestral gods. And so that's why we do it that way. And that's why we encourage all of our folk to worship the gods as the Aesir and to join the Asatru Folk Assembly. That's what we got making up for donations and for last week. You guys are celebrating May Day this coming weekend, correct?
Yes.
So plug that and tell people a little bit about it, if you will.
So we have May Day at Horshoff. It starts at 1 o'clock. Our food pantry starts at 11. If anybody wants to come out and help give out food. Then the event will start around 1, and usually we'll do some folk time, and then Svan will teach us a class on about May Day. So if you're new, you know what's going to happen and what it's about. And then we'll do ritual, then we'll do the maypole, and then we'll have dinner, and then usually just hang out until everybody's ready to leave. Unfortunately, me and Daniel will not be there. It's our 27th anniversary, so we are going to see Niagara Falls, which I'm excited. I've never seen Niagara Falls before. But if there's a lot of great people at Thor's Hall, so if you can come, you should come hang out with Swan and the other folks there. They would love to have you.
Absolutely. We'd love to get you guys out. So here's the thing. Our Hoffs exist and they do something every single month. We would love to have you guys come be part of things. Each of our Hoffs you can find on Google Maps, and which is kind of a cool thing. There's something legit and tangible feeling when you enter it into Google Maps and it gives you directions and takes you right to it. But you don't need to wait till a national event to check out one of our Hoffs and try to see what this is all about. So if you're within, so 3 of our Hoffs celebrated May Day last weekend. Thor's Hoff is going to be celebrating it this coming weekend. If you want to be a part of that, you absolutely should. It's in Linden, North Carolina. If you're interested, please reach out to hyoung@runestone.org or any AFA leadership, and they get you all set up, and folks would be excited to celebrate with you.
Yes.
One of the reasons that I had you on, I want to kind of direct it this way, and we'll take it wherever people who have questions are. But I think a lot of people wonder what this looks like in real life and maybe haven't experienced it or are unfamiliar with what, how this really works in the real world. And I appreciate you giving kind of an itinerary. In a lot of ways, this should be very familiar to folks. You show up, there's a day of fellowship. There is ritual that goes on. There is usually some instruction in the form of, like Svan will give, Gothi Svan, who you guys have all seen on here. You'll get to see him in the flesh. He gives wonderful classes or instruction on different things that are relevant to our faith, to the holiday being celebrated, whatever is particularly important to him at the time to talk to folks about. It's not a lot of sitting down for a big sermon time, though. A lot of it is active ritual of participating in the gift cycle with our gods and fellowshipping and getting time to spend with our folk in a holy place for a holy purpose. We share a meal, and then we also do a sumble, which is another ritual of ours that it's kind of I say it's ritualized toasting. It's not really like everybody sitting around drinking heavy, but people will raise a toast to the first round to one of our gods, second round to one of their ancestors or one of our ancestors. And the third round, is kind of a little bit more free form on something that they want to make a toast about. But it's really special if you haven't been to one. It brings community together in a really special way that's hard to describe unless you're there. But yeah, you should check it out, definitely. And that's kind of how things work. One of the things I was talking to our law speaker about is, I don't know, often dealing with our folk, it's like herding cats sometimes on things. Some people don't have a lot of experience in their life doing religious things. We get people from a lot of different backgrounds, a lot of different stuff. Now that we have Hoffs, we start developing a lot more of the kind of problems that are religious, that any serious religious group deals with. We get a lot of, ladies fighting over who's doing what in the kitchen, and people, arguing over who they're dating or who they're not or whatever. Get stuff that I think any successful religion gets about people who build their life around their church and what they do within that religious community. And you never want to see problems, but those are the kind of problems that we want to have. And it's a welcome change for some of the nonsense or the internet drama or some of the other artificial kind of problems that I think are so often a thing in today. So I wanted Heather to kind of speak a little bit on how that works, how that has worked as a frith weaver. Those of you not familiar, that's a big responsibility and role for our ladies. Is I think we've all experienced in life, women can cause and exacerbate problems in a particularly destructive way, but they can also bring folks together and calm problems and unite people in a really special way. And that's what they're called upon to do in Asatru. So, Heather, could you kind of talk to people a little bit about that?
I think like at Thorshoff, when we first got Thorshoff, me and Daniel were like, I don't know, and not to sound bad, but like the outcast, because Thorshoff was pretty much Svan's kindred that came in, and me and Daniel were the two that weren't Svan's kindred. So they already kind of had their ways of doing things, but I wanted to try to have like some way to put Heather in Thorshoff. So my thing is all the ladies that come to Thorshoff, because when I joined the AFA, I was the lady that sat in the corner and wouldn't talk to anybody. So I decided everybody who comes to Thorshoff will not be that lady, because I will harass you like an aggravating little sister and talk to you, make you talk to me. And I think that's what a lot of our ladies need. A lot of our ladies we're in our own heads, so we're scared that people are judging us or don't like us, where if we just come and smother them, that kind of takes that fear away. So at Thorshoff, that's what I do. If you're new or old at Thorshoff, I just will talk your ears off. Other ladies as well. I talked to a lot of ladies in Nordhoff as well as Odenshoff and Baldershoff. I think us women being able to depend on each other, being able to lean on each other and not tear each other down is one of the big things for Asatru, because I say out in the real world, because to me Asatru is like my safe spot. But like being at the Hoff is my safe place. But out in the world, as women, it's always somebody trying to tear another woman down. So I just didn't want that to be a thing in Asatru, because I love being at the Hoff. I loved being with my kindred. I loved being there. And I didn't want something that simple to make it a bad experience, if that makes sense.
No, it does. And that's important. I think that's one of the, I think just one of the ills of the world that we live in is folks have been, and it's ramped up recently, but it's been going for a while. People have been really atomized. We don't have the same community involvement that I think we once had. I know that it's really popular to say that diversity is our strength in the West, and whatever else it might do, an overabundance of it has a tendency to push aside commonality. And commonality is what you build community on. It's all those things that everybody has in common. Most of us today, through a lot of different reasons, find ourselves surrounded by people all the time. We've got tons of neighbors, especially if you live, in a city, in a town, in a neighborhood, tons of neighbors, but do you know them? There's a time not so long ago where you knew your neighbors. ancestors and you had friends and you guys all went to the same church, or you guys all kids went to the same school, or you had the same things that you held in common that you valued. I don't think we have that anymore. We don't have it regionally. We don't have that in places. And we are working really hard to, in the sphere of influence that we have, to bring that back and to bring community back. Our Hoffs are such a huge step towards that. And, but what you get is you get people that aren't quite used to that. And you get people that were raised without that and maybe not having those skills that so many generations of our ancestors and our family. I don't mean in the way back. I mean like our parents and grandparents and great grandparents had when it came to coming together for church, for worship, for those kind of things, and working together. So it's kind of a new experience, and it's natural, and it's one that's healthy for us, but it takes a little finessing to get it there. And so often our ladies are the ones that do that. And I know that Heather's kind of a standout in that, in the example for a lot of our ladies in that. So I wanted her on to kind of answer some questions and talk about that. I think we'll hit some of these questions and kind of see where it goes. And Heather, please feel free to jump in if something hits you or there's something that
Well, I did want to mention that building Frith doesn't only have to be in the Hoffs. Like, you've been to our house, so you've met Ginger. Our neighbor Ginger is the sweetest thing ever. But we don't hide who we are from Ginger. So every day or once a week, Ginger has some new question about Asatru. And it's just fun watching her learn and teaching her, even though, will she come to the Hoff ever? Probably not. But am I probably the only Asatru family she'll meet? Probably. So I want to make sure that I leave a good mark for us on Ginger. So when she talks to somebody else, she'll say, oh, well, my neighbors are also true. They mow my grass. They help me trim my lawn. They bring me over dinner, when they have extra dinner. And I think that means a lot as well, because it helps the way the community sees us. If we do the Frithweaving with people outside of the AFA as well, then they'll see that things that are said about us aren't necessarily true. They're just words. Our actions are what makes, it true.
All right. Well, get to a couple of things on here. Trent asks, Heather, which Hoff is your favorite and why is it yours Hoff?
I like all the Hoffs. My favorite, of course, is Thor's Hoff, but I think Odin's Hoff was, outside of Thor's Hoff, would have been my favorite Hoff, just because I remember when we weren't Asatru, Daniel told us, me and Lauren, that we were going to take a trip to this Hoff in California, and he was going to prove to me that I would like the AFA. And that Hoff was Odin's Hoff. And then I finally got to go to Odin's Hoff. And it's just a very special place. Like, it's a very special place in general, but to our family. So I would say Odin's Hoff.
Take that, Trent. All right. So also from an East, Madison would like to know, hey, Heather, what's your favorite moment in AFA history so far?
I have a ton, but I'm going to have to say renewing my vows at Thor's Hoff with all of our friends, our true friends in our true religion. That was probably the best day of me and Daniel's life, much less in AFA. The second would be watching my husband become a Gothi and then a Witten.
acceptable answers. Just so everybody is kind of, if they missed your first appearance on the show or stuff, how long have you been in the Asatru Folk Assembly?
I think this is our 5th year.
So that's a lot of stuff relatively quickly.
Yeah.
Rachel asks, so Heather, just how awesome is your youngest kiddo?
Oh, she's amazing. That's my best bud in the whole world right there. I came home today and she said she made bread because she wanted to have a grilled cheese sandwich. So she spent hours making bread so she could make a grilled cheese sandwich. But Lauren had a hard time at school a few years back and kind of digressed in her social skills, and watching her and the young Kinsler become friends and see her feel confident again has really really tickled my heart in a way that little Miss Kinsler doesn't even know.
Well, that's awesome. It's really special to see the kids building friendships and getting, just to see them playing together and doing stuff. And I know they're older kids, it's a little bit different, but we were at the Hoff last weekend. Mandy was sick, so it was just me and Aubrey, and it was really nice to just watch her play with the other kids and immediately feel so at home there. I love that about our Hoffs and about what we're doing.
And that you don't have to watch your kid like a hawk. You can just let them run around and play. That was the hardest thing for me at first, is just letting Lauren out of my sight and knowing she would be okay. But now half the time we'll be at a national event and I don't even know where my child is for 3 days.
That's one of the really special things, because in the world today, there's not a lot of places you can do that. So it's really nice to have that for our kids and for their families. Next up, Screwball 88. Sorry, there was a little mix up on the time tonight. Looks like you were here a little bit early for the program, but we're glad you're here. Glad you made it. Matt, I've been watching the AFA for a while. I think what the AFA is doing is great. My question is, why are there so many haters? I saw a nasty Twitter page. It's a complicated question, and our people, so I'm trying to, those things, of course, they make me angry. And they make me angry because most of the time the criticism's dishonest. But one thing that I have noticed is there is all right, so I guess the first foundation to lay on it, our founder, Stephen McNallen, has always talked about how our folk suffer from a soul sickness. The more we have been separated from our gods, separated from being able to be proud of ourselves, and the further heterosexual white people, specifically heterosexual white men, but not only us, are devalued by the world that we live in, it affects us in a lot of ways. And I think up front, it causes a lot of people to be really depressed. But over time, there's a class of people that have defined themselves by resisting or being different. And they've seen a lot of stuff they've been a part of turn out to be dishonest or not what it was cracked up to be. And they've wasted a lot of years and a lot of time and made a lot of destructive choices under the pretext that it was going to make things better and that it was going to bring some kind of victory. And then when that didn't happen, I think it builds a lot of resentment with people. We've got a certain amount of people that have built their identity around failure, but failing in a, gnashing of teeth and waving your fist in the air, like crashing and burning in a spectacular way, but in a way so they can feel more morally superior doing it. And there's something, and I've seen this in a couple of different ways. So I know this is a really convoluted answer. They're the same people, and I want to follow on a little bit different thread here in a second, but some of those same people, and the only thing I know to liken it to, and I don't take this lightly and I don't say it flippantly, we've all known women that will find and they'll be in an abusive relationship. And on the outside, we can't understand. We don't know why. They deserve so much better. They shouldn't have to live like that. We want to help them. We want to whatever. And so you try to save them. You try to go in and lead them to something better. But a lot of the time there's something internally broken to where they always go back to the same abusive kind of situation. Even if it's a different guy, they have a norm that they are used to. And as odd as it may sound, there is a comfort in being in a bad situation that you're used to than in a really good situation that's completely foreign and scary to you because you don't know how to live that way. And I've seen that with a lot of our folk, and I've seen it a lot over the years, and it makes me really sad. Yeah, the people that make pages and say mean things, especially when they're not true, yeah, I get mad at those people. But from a distance and in a bigger way, I'm really sad that that's the way so many of our people are. But going from a situation where you're losing, when you start to win, when we start to see accomplishment and do things, and I watch this, and when we see the hate coming at us, it's almost always when we reach a new plateau of winning or doing better or elevating something that we do. It's like you can't have nice things because there's this crab in the bucket. We've got to pull each other back down so we can wallow in losing together rather than concentrate on winning and getting out of the bucket. I wish it wasn't that way. It very, very much is, and you can always kind of predict it almost. And I wish it wasn't. We're working really hard to heal that's broken about our folk that make that happen. The other thing is, so that's the one thing. And I said I was going to get to something else too that's a different phenomenon that goes along with it. Sometimes I'm trying to think of where we've seen it in different ways. And I think some of the time you've seen it with long distance relationship pen pal things, to where sometimes someone will find somebody and they will build so much of their expectations and their hopes and their dreams around them that when it comes time to actually have a relationship and meet them in real life, they chicken out and they won't do it, because actually doing it and actually meeting that person will shatter your dreams. They can't ever possibly be as perfect as you've made them out to be in your head. They can't ever possibly live up to the dream, and you don't want to risk it not being what you've built it up to be. So you're scared to meet that person. I think I know I've seen that with Asatru too. When people have an idea of what it should be or what it might be or what it could be, there is a real fear when actually going out and being part of something, because then it's real. Then you have to deal with the interpersonal stuff. You have to deal with anything that makes you uncomfortable doing something you haven't done before, or being in a social situation with people you don't know. I watched this with Hoffs. I've had people, and it's apropos. I think Heather's here for this because it's happened a lot of different places, but it happened in a really glaring way at Thorshoff. We had a group of people that were just begging, and I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, but they were, man, we want a Hoff so bad. What do we have to do to get a Hoff? How do we get a Hoff out here? We want a Hoff. A Hoff would be amazing. As soon as we have a Hoff and it's real, all of a sudden those people, a lot of those people got scared and ran off and hid, and we haven't heard from them since. The reality of, oh wow, there's actually this building that we have to take care of. There's stuff we have to do physically, and we have to show up here, and maybe somebody will drive by and say something nasty or honk a horn at us or flip us off or whatever. Man, maybe there'll be some attempt. Maybe somebody I know will know that I go to this Hoff. All of a sudden, when it's real, the same people that say they want it so bad aren't really, as the kids say, about that life. So I think both of those things factor in, and that's why some of it is. But we got some really damaged people, and I think that's where a lot of that comes out. Heather, do you have any thoughts on that? I know you've seen a lot of that.
Yeah, it was really hard when we got Thorshoff because it was going to be our kindred, doing something together, building something great. And then the next thing I know, it's me and Daniel by ourselves. I mean, we have something great now, but we didn't know where it was going at the time. We had to build new relationships and new friendships with people who didn't know us after we had been with another group of people for forever. I just feel like it was such a foolish thing because there was many a days and nights that I was there by myself, all by myself, and nobody bothered me at all. My job knows where I go to church, and nobody bothers me at all. They actually donate to our coat drive. They try to get food together to help for our food pantry if they can. It's not usually a lot because it's just, women donating what they can. But if you don't try to be so secretive about your life, none of this stuff that these people say usually, I won't say none of it because it has affected other people, but it usually doesn't affect you if you don't make it a fear. Like if you hide it, people find it. Like they're scared of what they don't know. And if you teach them, then they won't be afraid of it.
Fair enough. So Amy Jo wants to know, what is your beauty secret, Heather?
Makeup. That's all I got for you.
Fair enough. She's gonna keep it to herself, ladies.
I don't do anything.
Y'all are on your own.
So I just use Dial soap.
Soap's a good step. I would encourage everybody does that. So Eric, the red light, his phone is about to die. Could you talk about matrescence and that process of becoming a mother? Does it change your approach to Asatru?
I don't think so. I think it kind of made me want to cling to Asatru more. Watching my daughter grow and learn and make friends, and then also think about where she'll be one day in Asatru. If she decides, watching the kids in the AFA grow, I think one day the Erickson's kids might be Githias and Gothis, and Aubrey might be Alsheria Gothi. You never know. Just it gives you so many things to think about and so much to look forward to. being a mom in the AFA, I just, it's just great because like if Lauren has a question and I can't answer it for her, I call Aunt Brandy. Aunt Brandy answers it for her, or she texts Aunt Mandy and sends her some funny Instagram, and I don't worry that my kid is texting grown-ups. It's just, as a mom, it's kind of freeing because I don't have to be a helicopter mom over my child because I know she's going to do what's right. Because being raised in Asatru, she does try to, live her life right.
And she's awesome, by the way. She's cool people. And
she has a personality, that's for sure.
She does. Tell her I said hi. Amy Jo says, well said, Heather. It does make sense. Are you going to zip line over Niagara Falls?
Oh, Heather don't do heights.
Hard no.
No.
Oh, okay. So Cliff, Whitten Clifford Erickson is asking for the alls. Here you go, Keith. Does the AFA have a decorum for Hales in Sumble to potential? Oh, okay. For Hales in Sumble to potentially controversial past or living folk such as Washington, Trump, Duke, Hitler, Charlemagne, Crowley, Edred, etc., etc., etc. So yes and no. And as with so many things on here, I think folks want me to have some kind of black and white answer on everything. But one of the basic tenets of Asatru is our responsibility as Aryan men and women to act nobly and to make good choices. So, yes, in the sense that anyone who is hailed at an AFA Sumble needs to be one of our folk. Needs to, if they were alive, be eligible for AFA membership. So that means a heterosexual white person. And there's plenty of other occasions that different kinds of things can be honored. But in an AFA Sumble, we're there for our commonality. And the point, while we're there as a family and as a folk, is to honor our people. So much is in the details and the attitude of it. No, we don't want to make a list of people you can and can't raise a horn to, but you don't want to raise a horn to people who are viciously the enemy of our folk. You don't want to raise a horn to villainous people who are bad people. And I think those particulars are judged and reasoned on by the Thule present, who is the officiator, I guess, bailiff, if you will, of the Sumble. Their job is to referee things said over the horn and to put a stop to something if something's being done improperly, to reject a toast that is done that we don't want to be affirmed and that we don't want to be celebrated over the horn. And they have a lot of discretion in doing that. And if they are doing that, it's because I have told them they have to. So it's not because they're just being a jerk and feel like messing up something you're saying. It's because we take what's said over that communal horn very seriously. And all of us in the circle who share that experience bear either benefit from it or responsibility for it if something's poorly done over it. So there's a certain amount of discretion there. I think that we want adult people to make good decisions because they're not just hailing that person on behalf of themselves. They're asking everyone in that circle to assent to that hail. So that's what I'd say to that. And the reason for the hail matters too. Just to say something edgy or controversial to virtue signal or to flush out people that you don't like or something, of course not. Your motives are wrong. Your intentions aren't pure. We don't want that put in the horn. If it's an honestly held belief and you're hailing them over something that you believe genuinely is worthy and right to hail them over, okay. But again, use some discretion. You know who you're in a circle with. Don't put them in a spot where they're made uncomfortable by unnecessarily by things you feel compelled to do for whatever reason. Be More Heathen says, Heather and Matt, other than say a usual bloat, is there anything specific you would recommend as far as between myself and my wife in more of a personal ritual, just us together? Heather, go ahead and take a swing at this first. Is there anything that you would suggest maybe he think about doing different if it's just he and his wife doing a ritual, or any thoughts you may have on that?
I know we do. Daniel has a little ritual that we do every morning and usually every night, where we stand by his altar and hold hands, and he'll say stuff, and me and Lauren repeat after him. It's kind of like a prayer ritual. It's just kind of giving thanks and for everything that we still have, and not taking things for granted. We also do the meal blessings together. I'm trying to think of other things. Before we had a Hoff, we would do, Daniel would go in the backyard and do heirs blessings rituals with me. Or if we had a mutual friend that was sick, we would go and we have a little table in the back and a little fire pit, and we would ritual out there together. Or even like friends of ours that are trying to have babies, we'll do like a small little ritual for together with Lauren, of course, our daughter, you know, trying to help them any way we can. I think you can do, there is no like limit on what you can do as a couple. It just depends on how well you work together. Like me and Daniel work together very well as a team. So everything he does, I usually follow, or vice versa. So anything you try isn't going to be wrong. You just have to try things until you find what fits for you and your wife. And you'll know, and then you'll know when it fits and what it is for you.
So I don't know. I know sometimes the answers are not as, yes, this is exactly what you should do, because things don't necessarily work like that. And there's a lot of details. It depends on what you want to do, but you have a, all right. So as a husband and wife by yourselves, I wouldn't do it, necessarily. You can do it in front of your home altar in a special place in your house. You could certainly do it in a special place outside or wherever. I don't think it needs the same space and accommodation of people that a regular bloat would need. But the other thing, depending on your purpose, you have an opportunity for it to be far more intimate and far more about you guys as a couple and as a family and your relationship with the gods. In a group, maybe the blessings that are asked for or what's expressed is much more general because it's got to apply and be meaningful to everyone who's there. But it's just you and your wife. It can focus a lot more on you, on your household, on your family, on your relationship, on any hardships or struggles that you guys are facing together and going through, or on any particular blessings or joys that you guys want to celebrate in your life and in your family and in your marriage. So it can be a lot more personal that way. In a lot of ways, it can be a lot more powerful that way. It's you guys coming directly before the gods as a couple and opening your hearts and really inviting the Aesir into your marriage in a special way. It's one of the things Fawn and I will go into the Rigthula when we do our lore study of it a little bit deeper, but people make a mockery and come up with some really gross swinger degenerate nonsense about that. Fundamentally, the couples mentioned in the Rigthula took in one of the Aesir. So again, our lore is never meant to be taken literally. It's meant to express truths. The truth is they opened their home and they opened their marriage to the Aesir coming in and being a part of their household and of their union. They involved the gods in their family and in the propagation of their family to the next generation by opening ourselves and letting the gods in as a couple and as a family. That's what elevated our people from a low status to greater and greater levels of nobility. You and your wife bringing the gods into your marriage and into your family in a very special and important way. I think that's a really cool opportunity that you guys have, and there's a lot of opportunity for that to strengthen you as a couple and your family. From some bald dude named Daniel. Heather, what motivated you to study to become a Githia? And are there any Githias that inspired you to do so?
Yes, there are Githias that inspired me. Katie Erickson has asked me every year since I've joined the AFA to if I would join to be a Githia. And of course, Witten Callahan. Why do I want to be a Githia? I want to be a Githia to do the things that need to be done for the folk. Like, I don't want to make promises that I can't keep. I want to be there when they need me. No matter what that is. I've told many of people, I will leave work right now and come to your house if you need me. And I mean that. I'm not just saying that to say that. After last year, there were some things, there were some people who were willing to jump on an airplane to come sit with me. And I want to give that to the folk, as many folk as needs it and wants it. for whatever reason, happy reasons, sad reasons, because they're lonely. I don't mind driving 6 hours to come have pizza with you. I did with Gothi Stam. We had pizza, we got in the car, and we came back home. If the folk need that, I think that's what we need to give to folk. And that's why I want to be a Githia. I don't know. That's kind of a touchy one, and I don't feel like crying. So that's what I have for right now.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I know this is a Heather question, but I'm gonna throw my 2 cents in. When I first got involved in Asatru, it was probably around 2001. I think a common thing, everybody, this was very, very common. Everybody wanted to go from 0 to being a Gothi like day one. How do I be a Gothi? And this is the stage we're in. So I'm not, I mean, shoot, I was probably that guy. So I'm not making fun of that. Flag on play. No, I was not probably that guy. I was absolutely that guy. And I can say for myself, and I assume a lot of people didn't really know what all that entailed. It's one of those, you want to swing for the fences and do your best. I mean, I say that in my experience, anything I do that I want to do, I want to throw myself at it 100% and go hard. But I think at that time, we didn't really know what it meant. I think so many people think externally that being a Gothi or a Githia is about basically being a master of ceremonies and putting on some kind of performance art, doing rituals for the gods. And I don't say that in any disrespectful way. I mean, like I mentioned, I was that guy. I was there. It's so much more than that. And I describe that because most people, when they first get involved, they haven't developed that sincere faith in the gods. They think they have it, but thinking you have it, and I've described this a lot too. So I'm gonna wax long-winded here. All right. So if you've ever been hunting, this may make sense. If you haven't, bear with me. If you're looking for something that you haven't seen or you don't know, it's really easy to think that you see it or think that you found it. It's different when it's real and all of a sudden you know it's real. I mean, you go hunting, and even if you've been hunting a lot, I say a lot, I don't know if I've been hunting a lot in my life, but I've been hunting, quite a few times. Whatever you're looking for, any dark spot in the woods. Oh, wait, is that? No, wait, but I heard something. Look over there. Look, that stump. Look, that shadow. Look, there it is. There's a moose over there. There's a moose over there. There's a moose. Until, oh, wow, there's a moose right there. How could I have been so stupid this whole time? It, smacks you in the face, hopefully not literally. That's the same with religion, I found, certainly within Asatru, and I would assume other faiths. A lot of us go in with good faith saying that we believe in the gods. And I think conceptually we want to believe, and maybe academically we believe, but there's something very different when your whole world is shaken because your reality as you knew it is no longer the same, because our gods exist in a indescribably tangible way. And those of you who haven't had that happen yet, it may not make a lot of sense. Those of you who it has, it does. I don't know there's any way to communicate it better other than to promise you it's a thing. And when it is, you realize there's more to it. So I say that to say this. When you go, when you go into being a Gothi or Githya, whatever the case may be, it is about putting on a performance that you think is going to impress the people who are there and hopefully impress the gods. But once you are doing it and you know that our gods are there and you felt it, it's very much about building that connection. I say building, and that's true, that's not wrong, but more facilitating that connection between our gods and the folk present, and sending the gifts of the folk up to the gods and the gifts from our gods out to our folk. And for example, this last weekend, and I didn't phone it in or anything. I think we all once you've had that moment, you always think that every bloat you do should be better, because these are the gods of our folk. They always deserve better. There is no way to do good enough to what they deserve. So I'm out there and I did bloat to Frey this last weekend. And, in my head, man, I wonder if this is good. I hope this is good enough. I hope this is, I hope I didn't mess up. There's all this responsibility. And I want to always feel that. I don't want there to ever be a time that I don't worry that I'm not trying hard enough. Victory never sleeps. You don't rest on your laurels. You always try to do more. But so anyways, I'm like, man, I hope I did good enough and whatever. And I had people coming up and being like, no, I felt it. I felt Freyr in the circle. I felt that made everything to me, because it's not about my performance. It's about, is the bloat we offered something one of our gods approved of, and by that approval blessed the people who were there. And if you can be part of that, that's everything. But I say all that again, I warned you, I said I was going to be long-winded on this one, and I am. That's only a part of it. That's such, time-wise, that is such a small fraction of what being a Gothi is about. The vast majority of time spent doing the work of a Gothi or a Githya is about counseling our folk. It's about working with people and helping them go through things, and not necessarily spiritual questions. Usually those are relatively easy and kind of fun to go through. But it's about, hey, my mom died. What do I do with this? Where does she go? What do I do? How do I go on with these things? How do I help my dad who's got to live on? What do I do? Hey, my wife died, or a child passed away, or a brother or a friend committed suicide, or hey, my wife left me, or I have a terminal disease, and all of these things are actual things that I've been through, or I say been through, that I've counseled people through, or you find people at the very, very worst days of their life, and you're trying to help those people. And it's a lot. And there's nothing I would rather do. I am so blessed to be in a spot where I get to do that. But it's a really heavy burden, and it's something really serious. So when we have somebody now that wants to step forward as a Gothi or a Githya, they really have to be made of some solid stuff for our folk and our gods, because it takes a toll. It is the most rewarding thing I could possibly imagine, but it is also one of the heaviest responsibilities I can imagine too. So don't know if that affects the question or not, but I think it was worth being said. All right. So Kevin T says, what are your guys' views on the Bhagavad Gita and the Aryan priestess, Savitri Devi? Do you believe that even though she was influenced by Hinduism, her points/books are still relevant? Heather, do you have any thoughts and feelings on Savitri Devi or the Bhagavad Gita that you would like to share with folks?
I do not.
Fair enough. So I will say this as far as relevancy. Those two topics are obviously within our circles and tangentially related. To the question of relevancy, no, I don't think either are particularly relevant. I think the Bhagavad Gita can be, but I will admit this, it is so inaccessible to me because all of the points of reference are so foreign and so distant. I understand all of the academic arguments on why it's valuable, and I don't in any way disrespect it or claim that it's not. But it is told through such a unfamiliar lens that it's very, very hard to relate to. And I'll say this, so a couple of things. I don't pretend that I've read every work of Savitri Devi, but I've read several. I really like her. I really like her writings. They're very, very specific to a specific time, a specific place, and to her experience in the time and place that she lived. And so I think they're fascinating. I really enjoy them, and I have a tremendous amount of respect for her. I don't, and I could be wrong here, so please don't, if I don't intend to misrepresent anything. I don't have any reason to believe she's actually a priestess of anything or ever took any kind of ordination or vows of becoming a priestess in anything. I think that's more of an honorific that's given to her. And yeah, I would be very glad to meet her. It would be really cool to meet and discuss things with her beyond the veil when I get there. Again, I really enjoy her writings. I really enjoy her, but I don't think that what she was offering touches on Asatru in a direct way. And I don't think it's particularly relevant to stuff at 2024 and what we're trying to do. I think it's very interesting, and I think it's, not taking anything away from it, but it's trapped in a really specific moment in time. And I don't, like I said, I enjoy it. And I think that it's relevant in the sense that it informs our understanding of history or how a lens in which we view the world. And I think that's good. But I don't think it's, it's certainly non-essential to what we're doing moving forward. But like I said, big fan, not taking anything away from it. I just don't, it's not an overtly Asatru forward text. Olivia, Heather, which of your ancestors do you feel most similar to? And what characteristics make you all so alike? How do you honor that ancestor?
So I would say my grandmother, Minnie Leneve, she's much different than me in a lot of ways. She was a very tough woman. My uncle used to call her Old Iron Britches. So she was a way tougher woman than I was, but that I am. But she taught me how to do so much for myself. As she raised me for a lot of my life. We worked fields. She had a restaurant that she opened for breakfast and lunch. And then we'd come home and work in fields, like 30 acres of fields, and canned food. And we never went to the store to buy anything but meat. She just really was amazing. Like the things this woman could do in one day reminds me of Whit Callahan, kind of, now that I think about it. She could accomplish so much. She wanted, a story they told at her funeral was she wanted a boat, and my grandfather wouldn't buy her a boat. So they lived in Florida on the coast, and she built a boat. And then my grandpa wouldn't pull it to the ocean, so she cut down trees and rolled her boat into the ocean. So I like to think the small things that I overcome in my life are because of the big things she overcame in hers. But I do honor her the most. When she passed away, I got flowers out of her yard, and I have them at my house. And when I get down, or when I get where I just need somebody to tell me I'm doing good, I talk to my flowers. And they hadn't bloomed in like 10 years. I just had these green flowers that never had flowers on them for like 10 years. And about 2-3 years ago, I started going out there and talking to them. And every year since, I would ask her, show me that you're proud of me, or, things that you would say. And they started blooming. So that's my grandma. That's my hero. She was my everything. And if I'm half of what she was, I'll be happy.
So, also to Heather, how are your Gothar studies going? And what is your first goal as a Githya?
My Gothar studies are going. I like to say I'm only 5 years old, Asatru, so it takes me a little while longer and a lot more studying to get some of the things done. But I have 14 assignments left, and I've finished my first year. So I think that's pretty good for somebody who is to go at a snail's pace. And I just don't know what my first goal is. My first goal, I think, will be something maybe simple to others, but accomplishing a ritual that the gods will appreciate, because that's probably the one thing I'm the most scared of.
Understand. I hope that you never stop being at least a little bit scared of doing them. Cody asks, with the difficulties surrounding the founding of Thorshoff, what are some of the biggest lessons you learned?
I would say the biggest lessons you can learn from a situation like that is not to judge everybody. You tend to get in it, people in general tend to get in a negative state of mind. Wittenspon came actually to my husband after that kindred left and asked my husband if he would help with Thorshoff. And if you ask my husband, I'm right there with him. So I took it as he asked me to, even though he did not. So just don't let it turn you negative. Don't let it make you bitter. I mean, if we would have let that one incident taint our lives, we would probably be doing ritual in our backyard still, not at Thorshoff, enjoying the beautiful Hoff that we have, and the beautiful folk that we have there, and have the friendship with Wittenswan and his family that we have. You just don't let one person make you think about everybody in one way. Always keep your mind open, and positive.
And kind of a note on that, our first 3 Hoffs had that same kind of experience. It displayed a little bit different in a little bit different ways, but a common point with the first 3 Hoffs, specifically with Thorshoff and Baldershoff, which both were, we got both of those in 2020. The first group of people who were so gung-ho to establish them turned out to not be worth it once it happened. Once it happened, they all of a sudden had second thoughts when it became real, like I mentioned earlier. So it's not an uncommon thing, and it's worked out really well in all circumstances. So the next question, faith-informed politics is greater than politic informed by faith. Why is this so important? A number of reasons, but I think that the key reason is that faith is fundamental and it's internal, or it's eternal rather. Your religion always exists, is always just as valuable and just as relevant. Politics is invariably a function of circumstance. Politics depends on where you live and when you live and what issues affect where you're at and how that works. The same person with the same core beliefs, same core values, same religious values would have very different politics at different times in their own country, certainly different times historically, absolutely different times depending upon where they lived. The realities of the time present different choices, different circumstances are everything. But your faith is eternal. The values that your faith gives you should certainly inform your politics and help you structure how you address political issues based on your core values. But those things don't change. The expression of them changes, and that has a lot to do with politics and your situation. But the guiding principles and values don't change. The other thing is you can see political choices through religious lenses based on religious principles, based on the things that you know to be right by your gods and your folk. That's very valuable in informing how you make political decisions or engage in politics, depending on your circumstance. But you can't really build a sincere faith off of politics. Now, some people come to our faith through political ideologies, and that's fine. A lot of people come to our faith for a variety of things. Some people come to our faith through music. Some people come to our faith through the Vikings TV show. Some people come to our faith from all kind of different angles. No shame in any of that. But if politics, what we've seen a lot is people want to add a special faith component to their politics, so they pick ours because they need something. Like I said, that's a good place. That's an okay place to start, but that's not real. Because you realize that religion is good, so we kind of need a religion, might as well pick this one. That's not a real faith. That's window dressing at its surface level. Developing a genuine belief, like I talked about earlier, where you know our gods exist and they are watching, and you devote yourself to be loyal to them. And that's what Asatru means. It means loyalty to the Aesir. That's very, very different. And it allows you to be fluid in the situation that you're in the area you find yourself in, and not tied to a political party that you don't necessarily share all those things with. It informs you in whatever your situation is, wherever your politics might be. And like I say, it's eternal. Your religion is useful to you no matter what country you live in, no matter what time period you live in. Politics, not so much. You're identifying as a Trump Republican would mean absolutely nothing if you lived in Mongolia in 1257. It would be completely meaningless. You being Asatru, however, would mean a lot. From Monk. Matt, is there a particular ritual for blessing and naming a sword for ritual? Yes, Monk, there absolutely is. It is most similar to a baby naming. It's obviously a little bit different, but that's the closest thing I'd liken it to. We performed one for Relentless at Sigerbloat last year at Sigerheim. Your sword that you donated to Njordshof also had the same ceremony performed over it at Njordshof. And if you reach out to Trent, he can give you all the details on it. There's absolutely a ceremony for naming a weapon and imbuing it with a fate and with gifts of the Nornir. Finn Wraith asks, what happens if your kids grow up and decide they don't believe in the gods? Would you still accept them? What say you, Heather?
I would say yes. I do have older children that are not Asatru. I would hope that wouldn't happen with Lauren, but if it does, she is still my baby, so she will always be my baby.
Yeah, that's an interesting question, and I think that every family kind of needs to define the boundaries of that question for themselves. Kind of like Heather said, I mean, it's different because in the generation we live in now, quite often we have people that come home to Asatru after their kids are raised and are adults, or maybe are significantly along in their upbringing. So it's not like they have that baked in quite the same way. I'd like to think in the future, our children who are born into Asatru will be less likely to turn their back on it. But the reality is, I'm sure that's going to happen for some people, and children are often going to make choices that we don't approve of. Sometimes those choices have consequences that are harder to decouple from and come back to Asatru. It's a curse that I think all parents kind of deal with, is what if your kids go astray, or what if they do stuff you don't approve of, and you hope for the best. At the end of the day, you're still their parent, and there's no real way to dissolve that relationship. It's not a voluntary one, it's a biological one. Depending on choices made and situations people find themselves in, it's very often a path back home for people that do go astray. I think what you find in a lot of faiths, I think Asatru is less likely to have this because we're life embracing, but you'll have, at least in Christian churches and other things, but that's what I'm most familiar with this phenomenon happening. You get young people that break from the church, in their late teens, go off and be wild and crazy and have life kick them in the butt, and then come back to their faith a little bit later when adulthood and responsibility settles in, and when life displays some realities in ways they didn't see when they were young and full of hormones and full of a lot of things that may distract you from an accurate view of things. So, just what stuff they do that's led them away from Asatru makes a big difference on that acceptance. And like I said, the devils are really in the details, and it's something that, every parent's going to have to figure out where that line is, where too far is too far, or something there's no coming back from. And I think that's probably a little bit different for each family and each circumstance. Ryan Orion Wotenson asks, question. There are vids and YouTubes about using swords similar to the Viking sword, which were used throughout Europe, for self-defense at home. Do you think that's good? Maybe a bat won't be enough. And I've seen a little bit of the chat on the side. Sometimes honesty isn't meant insultingly, it's just keeping it real. No, that's silly, and using a real modern weapon is much, much better. Is it fun and interesting to learn how to use a Viking sword? Absolutely. If you want to watch on YouTube and train and practice and learn how to do sword fighting in an authentic way, as a fun activity, as a hobby, as a living history thing, as a ceremonial thing, absolutely, I think that's great. I think it'd be awesome. Like, I'm not kidding with you. If we were both here, we both had swords, and you want to practice watching some YouTube videos, I'm game for it. Let's do it. I'm not making fun. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I've seen some of your arguments. No, a gun is much, much better for home defense. And I don't think you get any special points in court for using strange and obscure weaponry. I think that makes you look eccentric and unbalanced and odd. I don't think that gets you sympathy from the court. So I don't see that, at least not in the United States. Maybe in other places it's different. I don't know what this question looks like in a country to where you don't have a right to keep and bear arms, or maybe what this looks like to someone who's lost that right. They're a convicted felon, other reasons, I don't know. But home defense and sword play, I don't think, lend themselves well to one another. And I don't think that's a really effective or reasonable thing to do. If you want to do it, I'm all for you legally defending yourself with whatever you have available, and go for it if that makes you happy and if that makes you better at defending yourself and your family. And in states where it's legal to do so, your home and property, absolutely. But I don't think it's the most efficient way, and I certainly don't advocate for that. That said, I'm looking at my wall right now. I have an axe somebody gave me at a AFA event. I think at Ostara, 3 years ago, 4 years ago? It's really cool. I like it. It's awesome. I have a German World War I era artillery saber. Heather's actually in possession of this, but I am the owner of Relentless, the ceremonial AFA sword. It is a model 1840 cavalry saber, Confederate use. It's awesome. I love it. I think it's great. I've even thought of learning those LARPy sword things, but just in case I could use it if I needed to. So, I mean, you're not silly for thinking that, but I don't think that is the effective tool for home defense. And I think you're better served if that's your real concern, thinking about other options. Okay, so Heather, side question. As a woman, do you think that that appeals to the ladies if you become an expert in Viking sword fighting?
I guess it depends on the lady.
You know, if you went back in time, if Daniel were proficient in Viking era sword play, would that have been more or less likely to result in your family?
Probably not. Although we do play around with the sword that I bought for my wedding. It's a replica, but it's pretty fun to threaten him with sometimes.
Okay, there you have it. Which European, also for you, Heather, and we'll start with you on this. Which European country do your ancestors come from?
I think I have to look at my ancestry. It's a bunch of them.
Find that suspect.
I know. I'm pretty sure it's. I just started this job, so I'm sorry.
You're fine.
I know.
All right. While Heather looks into this, I will tell you that my ancestors from America. Most of my people have been here for hundreds of years. Certainly on my mom's side, most of my ancestors have been here since like the 1600s. Most of them come from England. I have some ancestry from Scotland. I have DNA test says I have some ancestry in the way back from southern Scandinavia. As far as people that I know that came over, mostly, like I said, from England, some Scotsmen through Canada and into the United States eventually in the 1800s. And most recently, in like the very early 1900s, I have a Swissman, Fritz Charles Montandon, and his wife, who is a French woman, Sophie, who came over separately. I believe their marriage was arranged in some way. They came over separately in the early 1900s. But like I said, most of my people have been here for a very long time. But a lone Frenchman and all of his ancestors, sorry, a Swissman and his ancestors, French lady and her ancestors, and then the vast majority from British Isles, specifically from England. Heather, did you get the bottom of that?
Yeah, I know my grandma on my dad's side was Polish, but I'm just English, German, and Swedish, Scottish. That's all.
There you go. Heather, which of the Aesir do you feel closest to?
I think I would say Frigga. I've been a mom almost my whole life, even to my younger sisters and brothers. I had to take care of them at a young age, so I've just always been the caregiver, taking care of everybody, loving everybody, making sure everybody's gets what they need. So I think I would say Frigga.
From the Wolf Throne, several questions, but all related. What is the earliest known origin in history for the existence of white people? And would that be the Indo-Europeans or the Pontic Caspians? I don't want to misspeak because the deep so this is what happens when people ask me, what are your 5 favorite movies? I go into an infinite analysis of all the movies I've ever watched and which is the exact top 5. So the question you asked is about history. History, as I understand it, implies the existence of writing. Archaeologically and historically is a slightly different question in academic circles, so I think I'm overthinking your question. In the broadest, most, what's our earliest reason to believe about white folks? I tend to believe in a Hyperborean origin. I think that's attested to in the ancient Indian scriptures. It certainly, obviously, permeates Germanic and Nordic writings about our origin, but that's a little unfair because that's the most northerly group of our people. But we also see it in a book called Arctic Homeland in the Vedas by Baal Tilak. And so I believe in a far northern orientation. I think polar might overstate it as far as an origin thing. As far as the oldest like written account or archaeological evidence of white people, I don't know. There are people that are far more down that rabbit hole than I am as far as the intricacies of the archaeology. Historically, with writing, I believe are descendant civilizations for the Indo-Europeans. But again, when you go back to actual writing of those people, it's always, the Proto-Indo-European language is speculative or guessed at from fragments and things. So the first emergence of writing amongst white folks is going to be hard. There's a lot of them that were very, very early, but exactly where and with the Pontic and Caspian areas, I know that some of the early migration went down there. As I said, this is no reflection of current modern populations in Asia and the Middle East, but you have people hearkening back to their Aryan origins very early on. That's obviously the most ancient calling card of Iranian people was that they're the land of the Aryans, just like you see the Irish, also Ireland meaning land of the Aryans. So you see that ancient Aryan current reflected in some very old population groups. But also you see what's called the old European cultures are also white people. And they exist simultaneous with and perhaps pre-Indo-European, like Aryan migration peoples. So you have kind of a spreading out of ancient white people in the Ice Age receding and progressing time. So it's really hard when you get that far back into history, and I think discoveries are made often enough there that it changes. If you're talking about the archaeology, if you're talking about the written history, I'm sure there are people out there a little bit more educated than I am on it. I try to be on top of it, and I will try to bone up. I feel bad not being able to give you a little bit better analysis than that, but it's the best I got at this point. Oh, there was more to the question. Okay, cool. There's more questions. I'm sorry. This got separated by 2 different posts from producer Nick, and it is my fault I did not read them all. Where did we come from before that? Do we know? Where would you place Hyperborea in our history? And did we move from the north into? Yeah, cool. I think I hit those. I think I didn't know those were the questions, but I hit those. I do think we have a very far northerly origin point. I think you see that in some of the myth cycles. I think you see that in some of the imagery. And like I mentioned, Arctic home in the Vedas is very convincing to me. So yeah, I think that Hyperborea might be polar or thereabouts, but I don't hold hard to that. It's not a firm tenet of my faith. It's just kind of a theory that I find really appealing and that I like. Yes, that's the best I got. Heather, do you have any thoughts on that? Is it something you have pondered?
This is a Rob Stam question.
Fair enough. So Trent knows better. Trent asks, I was here you go, Thee. What's your proudest achievement in your almost 8 years leading the Asatru Folk Assembly? Again, when you ask what is the most, then I start balancing all these things and doing ridiculous calculations in my head and needless nonsense. Up there, quite a few and from different reasons. So here is an assortment. I don't think I can give you a one that's the proudest. The question skews towards like in an Asatru capacity, but in those 8 years, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention marrying Mandy in 2017, the birth of my daughter in 2020. Each of our Hoffs, when we got those, and taking a moment on it, it's all of us. It certainly wasn't just a me thing on any of the Hoffs. And I don't want to diminish anybody else's contribution or self-aggrandize any more than, is what it is. You asked me what I was proud of. In a way, and it's different at each of them. Thorshoff is special because it was my first one that I proved like I can do this. And that's not about me being a badass. That's about, at that time especially, it's about me proving being worthy of being in the big chair on it. Can I bring this to our folk and our gods? So that was huge for me. But with all 3 of the Hoffs that we've gotten under my leadership, on behalf of the AFA, being able to, because this is what we do at a dedication, to be able to formally gift our gods their very first temple in 1,000 years. I'm tremendously proud to have been able to be in that position and to do that. I was very, very proud this last December because I planned this for a long time. The statues of Steve and Sheila, I wanted them for forever. I remember talked about them before I was anything special in the AFA, wanting that and wishing that we had that. I remember talking to our law speaker the weekend of my wedding. So Mandy and I got married in 2017 at Odenshoff. And we did it the Sunday following our midsummer that year. And law speaker Turnage came out. He performed our wedding, and he was out at the midsummer. And I remember talking to him then about getting a statue of Steve and what that would look like, and looking into it. And it seemed so very out of reach, but it's something I really wanted to do, and I felt we needed to do. Last spring sometime, like March, April, May, somewhere in there, after we, little while after we got Sigerheim, but shortly there, I found a company that could do it at a price point we could do. I started planning with them and trying to make that happen and trying to keep it under wraps and not let the McNallans know. And took for getting custom made statues done and shipped around the world to us and whatever else. Didn't take a long time, but it took a long time compared to what the customer service told me it might take. So I spent a long time anticipating that and trying to keep it a secret and work towards it and get it to happen. And at Yule, being able to present that as a gift to Steve and Sheila, and to get the phone call after they watched the little video that Lydia Phelps made for us, to hear their appreciation in their voice of doing that, I was very proud to be able to offer that to them on behalf of the Asatru Folk Assembly. Very, very proud of that, because I think it really touched them in a way that maybe other things hadn't in the same way. And that was really special. And the phone call and conversation I had with them about that was I was very, very proud to be able to do that. Wolf Throne, do AFA members often say scowl when toasting? Sometimes. I don't think it's a thing that happens disproportionately, but sometimes. So Kevin T asks a really good question. Can a local group of people who want to join the AFA integrate their group into something like a kindred? Yes, absolutely. The exact details of how that would work would depend on some of the circumstances, but yes, certainly. Like I said, the particulars matter. I'd love to have that conversation. If you've got a group of people that would like to join, let's make it happen. But yeah, I imagine that's how it would work, and we'd be very eager for something like that to happen. And that actually did happen with a couple of groups when we first started our Kindred program. But that's been a long time ago. But yeah, I'd say yes to that. Question to Matt: as an ex-Jehovah's Witness, my family is still active. How did you leave your congregation and open up to telling your family your new spiritual path? And do they still talk to you? So, Alexis, it's an interesting question. So it wasn't as though my parents were, because that would be a little bit different and more complex. It was my aunt. I was raised by my mom and my dad without any real religiosity. Um, Generically, we were Protestant Christians of some sort, I suppose, because you have to put something down. But none of them went to church. It wasn't a part of my life at all. But my aunt and my cousins were very, very, say my cousins, they were kids, but my aunt was very devoutly a Jehovah's Witness. And so, remember around 1995, my grandfather passed. And I had a lot of, I always felt like I was a spiritual person, but I didn't have any expression of that. In 95, I was in eighth grade, and I, didn't really know where to turn or what to do. My family wasn't very religious, and there wasn't really much to offer there. So independently, I started reading my Bible, and I read it all the way through and ended up doing that a couple of times. My aunt was a very devout Jehovah's Witness, and it seemed at the time to me they were the Christians that were most familiar with their Bibles, the most strictly biblical in how they did things. And so I started attending stuff with her and with my cousins and going to the Kingdom Hall, and eventually got baptized when I was 18. And I still am very thankful for that. Like, I'm very thankful that they kept it completely Jewish in their expression of Christianity, because it separated things. All of the things that they're against doing that other Christians do, or the vast majority of those things, are the elements of our faith that Christianity co-opted when they converted the tribes of Europe. So I got to see like the fun Christianity and the cool Christianity, and the Christianity that really resonated with me was all pagan stuff that was bad. And the good Christianity, in the air quotes, the good Christianity was all a very Jewish practice that was very foreign to me and my values. And eventually, when I finally had a hard break, it wasn't for Asatru, because I didn't know Asatru was a living thing that existed. It didn't even occur to me. But I wanted to be honest. And if Jehovah is the all-powerful God of all the things, and he knows our thoughts and whatever, I don't want to try to be dishonest with him about who I am and what I believe. And from really trying hard to study my Bible, he was a bad person. And I didn't want to be on his team. It was scary. And then when I realized, okay, well, what did our people have before this? Because, we had stuff. I knew my history. I knew that was a thing. I looked into it and I found the AFA. And I know that wasn't really your question. So when I did that, it was a little bit different, being as how I didn't live with my aunt or my cousin, and they weren't my most direct family link. But no, ever since I was disfellowshipped for rejecting Jehovah and being a Jehovah's Witness, they don't talk to me at all. One of my cousins has talked to me a little bit. We used to be very close. We weren't for a while. We still aren't, but he talked to me a little bit when my mom was going through some struggles. But he wasn't a Jehovah's Witness. His family, some of his mom and some of his siblings were. The ones that are still Jehovah's Witnesses, no, I don't think they've talked to me ever since then, even once. And I say that I haven't reached out to talk to them a lot and had it rejected a little bit with my cousin Scott. Me and Scott used to be really close. But no, it was a hard break with people who were very, very close to me for a lot of years of my formative years. I'd say with my cousins, man, since I was like 7 or 8, we were together often, like several times per year, spending weeks and months together until I was 20 or so. I say 20 or so. So I was like 18, 19, maybe 20. Yeah, I'll go to 20 till I was about 20. So yeah, that was really hard. And I still think about it sometimes. I care about my cousins. Ironically, during that time, my cousin Scott made a friendship with another friend of mine from high school. So I kind of vicariously try to ask about him and see how he's doing, or I'll ask my dad or other family members, to check on some of my cousins and wonder how they're doing and keep up with them a little bit. But that was really hard. How did I leave the congregation? A couple of things. I didn't do this on purpose, and it sounds kind of chicken crap from a distance, but it was. I went through a couple of things. My uncle, so I was living, all right, when I was most active participating with Jehovah's Witnesses, I was part of a congregation in Fairbanks. I'd grown up, my mom and I'd lived in Anchorage, and to go to college briefly, and I didn't graduate, but to go to college really briefly, I went up to the University of Alaska Fairbanks, and I lived with my aunt and my cousins for a short time up there, maybe about a year or so. During that time, though, we had a family emergency at home. My uncle had passed away. He ended up drinking himself to death, unfortunately, and my mom was down there all by herself trying to deal with it, so I had to go home. And once I got down there, I never really went back. And while I was down there, when I first got there, I tried to go to a congregation in Anchorage, but relatively quickly going through things, it really got me to thinking a little bit more. And so while I was down there and going through some other stuff, I ended up making some decisions about the trajectory of my life, and I never went back, and I started down the road towards Asatru. So it wasn't like it was a little bit different. I had the convenience of distance to make a little bit of that initial separation. But no, it was really hard. And the separation from kin is really difficult. That was one of the harshest curses of our ancestors, was for someone to be separated from kin, or for there to be strife amongst kinsmen, because there's no win on that. You guys are on the same team, so anything you would do to hurt one another just collectively hurts your team. There's no recompense. There's no making it right. Strife amongst kinsmen is bad, and it's one of those bads that's not really fixable. All right. So also from the Wolf Throne, have you heard of the right-wing music genre Rock Against Communism and National Socialist black metal? Yes, I have. I don't like that kind of music. It's not even a reference to the politics. I don't like just loud, hard, poor vocal screaming. I hate that. I hate punk. So much of the National Socialist black metal that I've heard is like punk music with really bad vocals, and I don't like that. I like pretty vocals. I like to sing along with music. I'm a lyrics guy and not like a instrumentals guy so much. So I really like to be able to sing along with my music, and that's just not my genre. Heather, are you aware of those types of music? What's your thoughts?
I am not. My husband probably is, but I do not know.
Yeah, it's kind of a niche genre. But yeah, it's just not my thing. Cody asks, is there a bloat and or stumble that really stuck with you? Heather, is there a bloat or stumble that really stuck with you?
I would say, I know Daniel spoke about this a million times, but Our very first event was Ostara. I think it was North Carolina. And I think it was the first time that everything became real. It was Matt's Thor bloat. And like, I don't know, it was just something about that bloat that it made it real for our whole family. Even our son, our oldest son, was there, and he was like, holy crap. um but yeah, I think that's the first time. I mean, I had been to other, bloats or whatever with the kindred we were with. But I think that's the first time I was in bloat and actually everything was real. Like, I actually felt the gods. I felt like I was where I was supposed to be. I mean, I knew that I was comfortable with the group of people, but kind of like what you were talking about earlier with the Jehovah's Witnesses, we had always tried to fit ourselves into places, and it was like we were a square trying to put ourselves in a circle. And when Matt did that Thor bloat that night, it was like, oh, we fit. We're a circle going into a circle hole. We're not a square trying to shove ourselves into a circle.
You guys have heard mine lots. I talked a lot about the de-sear bloat at Winter Nights, where I had that interaction with my grandmother. The de-sear bloat at Winter Nights this last year, where I was able to experience that at my mother's, like our whole circle, the whole ritual at my mother's grave. Trying to think into the way back, because I'm been doing this a long time. There's a number of rituals that stand out for a lot of different reasons. Trying to think of the ones that stick out for something really good or something really special. There have been, you said a bloat or a symbol, so we'll keep it at that. Been at a really cool bloat. Actually, it might have been at the High Symbol where we had wolf callbacks. Now, we cheated. We were at a wolf preserve in Southern California, but it was really cool to when we'd hail something or we'd do that. It might have been a bloat. I'm trying to even remember. But the cool thing was the wolf callbacks to what we do. In Alaska, I was at a couple of bloats where we had wolf callbacks. And that was authentic because we were out in the woods in Alaska and, in the distance, sound really carries. But that was really kind of cool and special. Remember once we were doing a Yule bloat in Palmer, Alaska, 35 miles north of Anchorage or so. And we had this raging bonfire. It was amazing. It was the best bonfire we ever had at a bloat I did. It was 10 pallets, I think, 10 pallet bonfire. But we'd carved the ritual circle with a snow blower out of the snow because there was probably 4 foot of snow around. So we carved it out in the yard with this snow blower, set up this 10 pallet fire in there, and we had a just spectacular Yule bach made out of hay bales that we were going to offer. And so we had it, and it was, I don't know, 10 feet or so away from the fire. but the fire was so hot. But everything else, it was probably -30 out. So during the bloat, we were spinning around because our front would be so scalding hot, but our backside would just be almost frostbitten. So we would like rotisserie ourselves on our own little axis during this. And right at the point in bloat, and I was conducting bloat, right at the point in bloat where we were going to offer the Yule Bach, like at that second when I was like, and we offer you this Yule Bach, and I went to grab it, it immediately hit its smoke point and burst into flames. And it was so cool at the time. And this is in, it's pitch black in out of the city in Alaska, so there's no light interference. It's the fire in the sky, and you can see forever. And this raging bonfire, we're surrounded by 4 foot of snow, and boom, it all burst into flames. It was spectacular. That sticks with me. I remember that one a lot. Yeah, there's tons I remember. Those ones really stand out and are special. Finn Wraith asks, have you visited the countries your ancestors are from? And if not, have you considered going there in the future? Heather, have you ever been to Europe? And have you or Daniel ever talked about going over there and visiting some of you guys' ancestral homelands?
We have talked about he wants to go to Germany one day, and I want to go to Ireland. But I don't know if we'll ever go. I mean, it's a dream. We may one day when we get old. Right now, I don't think it's feasible.
Fair enough. Okay. Yes, sort of. So I mentioned before, no, I've never been to France, and I've never been to Switzerland, never been to Scotland. I have been to England. And the time I went, it wasn't specifically to any location that a specific ancestor came from, but I did get to go to England, and that was really cool and special. Generally, just knowing migratory patterns and stuff, I think it counts. The times that I have been fortunate enough to go to Norway and to Sweden and Denmark and Germany, I know that many of my ancestors were there at one point in different ways, in different places. I've been so very lucky and blessed to go to those places. I have very specifically been to parts of the United States that my ancestors were from and visited their graves. And that's been really special. It's not fair. Okay, so it is fair. Most of my mom's ancestors during the time they've been in the United States were all coalesced around a small area in Mississippi that they were there from 1812 onward. They moved from the Carolinas, helped cut the road into New Orleans to get munitions and stuff to New Orleans for the Battle of New Orleans, and kind of stopped and made a home in Bond and Stone counties, Mississippi, which is, kind of southern Mississippi. And that was kind of where they were for about 100 and I don't know, a lot of them, some of them still are today. I still have a great aunt that lives there today and never left and was part of that. I've been back there to that part of Mississippi a number of times. Once as an adult. I will plan on doing more when I move to Sigerheim, because that's a really special place where a whole lot of my ancestors are buried, and that's very special. What else we got? Heather, how did you find Asatru? When did it all start to make sense that it was the natural / correct way?
Well, I found Asatru. Actually, Daniel, my husband, found Asatru. We were studying with the Jehovah Witness, and they said the soul is in the blood. So Daniel started tracing his blood, which led him to the AFA through his ancestors. Then Daniel and Lauren, my youngest, started learning Asatru, and I picked on them about learning Asatru. Told them they were going to wear the metal helmets and the capes and rob the neighbors. I mean, I was the worst of the worst. And then Daniel finally reached out to a folk builder in the AFA to meet up with them to our daughter wanted to have more people like us or stop doing it. So they said that they could come and join them for, I want to say it was Charming the Plow, but I may be wrong. And then I told Daniel he wasn't taking our daughter without me. So I went, and when we pulled out of that particular house, I joined the AFA. Not because I knew what the AFA was like as a religion, but the way the people treated me at that event. They didn't get aggravated when I had to ask questions because I didn't know anything, like literally nothing. There was one fella, he sat there. He's still a good friend of ours. He sat there and literally explained everything to me at the most like 101 level you could possibly get. And never got aggravated when I was like, I still don't get it. And then the more I learned, like I said, it wasn't too long. I don't remember how long it was when we went to the Ostara in North Carolina, and I went and to that bloat that Matt did, and that's when I actually knew I was in the right spot. I always felt like I fit here, but once I felt the gods, then I knew I fit here.
All right. And Heather, did you have a serious or a similar experience with Asatru affecting your family as Matt has? I think that's harkening back to the Jehovah's Witness question.
We do not have that problem. Daniel's mother is Jehovah's Witness, but she has never been baptized. So she is what they call a student. So if she was to get baptized, then she would have to stop talking to us. But for whatever reason, she will never take that next step. So she just studies with them, which is like having a Bible study, every week. And she goes to their church. But no, we still talk. His mom's a little different. We still do holidays and things with her, and she does them with us. I think she just has a harder time of letting go of things. So she's not 100%, like I said, baptized. So none of his family turned on us.
All right. Well, I appreciate you being here tonight, Heather. Thank you very much for sharing of yourself this evening. Thank you guys all for your questions. We appreciate you. Look forward to seeing you guys again next week on our 99th episode of Victory Never Sleeps. Wittensvon will return and we will go through and study the Harbarthsliode. So I look forward to that. It's going to be a good conversation. We'll see you guys next week. I hope those of you anywhere near Thorshof can make it out and celebrate May Day. Until then, hail the Aesir, hail the folk, hail the AFA, and remember that victory never sleeps.